Hello everyone, and welcome back to Good Nightmare, a podcast where we talk about all of the creepy, strange and unusual parts of life. Today's episode was recommended to me by my friend Kate, the host of Ignorance Was Bliss, and features, as is common on Good Nightmare, a very intriguing female figure. Before we get started, I want to remind you about Studio Sweden. I've been using the Regent headphones to do my recording and editing, and the sound quality is fantastic. It helps me to pick up on those pesky ums and sighs that are the bane of all podcasters' editing. I personally chose the Regent headphones in black, as that's my go-to colour, and they're an over-the-ear design which is perfect for podcast production. Not only are they high-tech, but they're sleek and sophisticated, and they go well with any outfit. I should know, I have to sit in front of a mirror when I record, not by choice, and I've worn them with my work clothes and my PJs, and they look stunning with both. By clicking the link in the show notes and using the promo code GOODNIGHTMARE, you're able to get 15% off your purchase. I'm actually trying to choose between pink or white and gold earphones for my next one. Eliza Margaret McNally, commonly known as Lizzie Halliday, was the first woman to be sentenced to execution by electric chair in 1894, being found responsible for the deaths of at least 4 people. Lizzie Halliday was born in 1859 in County Antrim, Ireland. She and her family emigrated to the US when she was still a child. The exact date remains unconfirmed, though it's suggested that Lizzie was between 5 and 8 years old. Not too much is said about Lizzie's early childhood, but at 20 years old, Lizzie met and married her first husband, Charles Hopkins, who's also known as Ketspel Brown in history books. The couple had their first son, who allegedly ended up being institutionalized later in life. In a stream of what appeared to be bad luck, Lizzie's husband Charles died in 1881. Lizzie remarried the same year to Artemus Brewer, but unfortunately he died less than a year on. It's said that Brewer would often be subjected to hair pulling and beating by his wife Lizzie before his untimely death. Starting to form somewhat of a pattern, Lizzie then went on to marry Hiram Parkinson, who ended up leaving her in the first year of marriage, perhaps having some insight or a gut feeling into who Lizzie truly was. Not one to give up, Lizzie went on to marry a war veteran by the name of George Smith. Lizzie allegedly made a failed attempt to poison George by adding arsenic to his tea. Following this, she stole items from his home and fled to Bellows Falls, Vermont, where she later married Charles Plaisdell, but she would vanish 2 weeks later. There was no word of Lizzie until the winter of 1888, where she showed up at a salon, going by the name of Maggie Hopkins. She set up a shop for herself, but was later arrested when she burned the shop down in order to collect insurance money. She was sentenced to 2 years in Philadelphia's Eastern State Penitentiary. Upon her release in 1889, and now going by the name Lizzie Brown, she found employment as a housekeeper for Paul Halliday, a 70-year-old man, twice widowed and living in Sullivan County, New York with his sons. Naturally, Lizzie and Halliday married shortly after. Lizzie was 30 years younger than her new husband. The relationship was troublesome from the beginning. Halliday reported to his sons that Lizzie was prone to spells of insanity that would come and go. Within the next 2 years of their marriage, their house and barn would burn down. Given Lizzie's history, she was immediately suspected of setting the fire. Following this event, Lizzie employed a neighbour to help her sell horses that she'd stolen from the property. Lizzie was acquitted of this crime on the grounds of insanity. As mentioned earlier, Paul and Lizzie lived with Paul's sons. John Halliday was one of these sons, who is reported to have been mentally disabled. Lizzie was known for openly taking a disliking to John, and when the Halliday mill and residence was burned down in 1893, killing John Halliday, who was inside the building. Only 4 years after the previous fires, Lizzie was arrested and sent to an asylum. As with even modern-day crimes, shortly after, Lizzie was declared to have been cured, of what I'm not entirely sure, but she was then sent home to Paul Halliday. Just before we get into a bit more of the action, remember to visit Studio Sweden using the link in the show notes. Upgrade your listening experience with high-tech earphones that catch every element of your music, podcast, or audiobook. The region over-the-ear headphones are perfect for any listening, and they're customizable. You can get caps to upgrade your look. I'm checking out the black marble and other options at the moment. So be sure to click on the link in the show notes and use my promo code GOODNIGHTMARE for 15% off. Did I mention they have worldwide free shipping? I may need another 2 or 3 pairs actually. Now the story only gets wilder from here. It may not come as a surprise to you that shortly after Lizzie's return, Paul Halliday disappeared. Lizzie claimed that he was visiting a nearby town to take care of some masonry work. The neighbours were naturally suspicious, and a search warrant was obtained on September 4, 1893. During the search, the bodies of 2 women who had been shot to death were found in the barn. The women were identified as 2 residents that Lizzie had stayed with previously in Philadelphia, Margaret and Sarah McQuillan. During questioning over these murders, Lizzie tore at her clothes and spoke incoherently. She was kept in custody, and some believed that she was faking her behaviour to gain a reprieve. Having discovered 2 bodies already on the property, the search continued. Only days after the bodies of the women were found, the mutilated body of Paul Halliday was discovered under the floorboards of his own home. He'd been shot at least twice. The body of a local peddler was also found on the property. Lizzie, of course, was the prime suspect in this murder too, given her direct ties to the other 3 murders. Lizzie was charged with the murders, with trial taking place at the Sullivan County Jail in New York. In her first weeks of imprisonment following conviction, Lizzie refused to eat, attacked the sheriff's wife, set fire to her bed, cut her own throat with broken glass, and allegedly tried to hang herself. When she had cut her own throat, she said, "I thought I would cut myself to see if I would bleed." Because of these erratic and dangerous behaviours, both towards herself and others, she was chained to the floor for the remaining months of her incarceration. While Lizzie was only convicted of 4 murders, it's widely speculated that she was also responsible for the deaths of her unfortunate earlier husbands, bringing the total to around 6. Lizzie was convicted on June 21, 1984, and was the first woman to be sentenced to die by electrocution. Governor Roswell P. Flower commuted her sentence to life in a mental institution after she was declared insane. She spent the remainder of her life in the Mattawan State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, but her stay was not peaceful. In 1906, Lizzie stabbed a nurse, Nellie Wicks, to death. Nellie was stabbed 200 times with a pair of scissors. While Lizzie was incarcerated, the press caught wind of her story, and her legend grew. She became known as the Wolf Woman of Sullivan County, and was also titled a Gypsy Queen, a leader of a group that roamed the Hudson and Mohawk valleys. There were claims that the shootings were done in a fashion of ritual, a circle shot through Paul's body, the 5 shots surrounding his heart. Naturally, these claims are unfounded, and can be attributed to the hysteria and imagination of the press and public. We all know how stories tend to grow over time. After a life of violence and torment, usually towards others, Lizzie Halliday passed away quietly on June 28, 1918, at 59 years old. It seems almost an ironic ending for such a turbulent life. Be sure to let me know about your favourite female figures from history, be they bad, good, or just a little bit unusual. You'll often find they're all three at once. If you have time, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast so you can be updated when new episodes come out and to give me a little bit of a boost. Feel free to email me at goodnightmare_s@outlook.com with your favourite fairy tales, historical crime stories, mysteries, or suggestions for future episodes. Feel free to send me a DM or an email if you want to chat about any of the topics covered, or if you just want to chat in general. I'm always up for making new friends and chatting with my listeners and hearing what you guys think. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for a promo from a fantastic podcast. I know I say that every time, but they really are all fantastic. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Hey guys, I'm Heather.
And I'm Rochelle.
And we're from Nature vs. Narcissism,
a true crime podcast mixed with some dark humor.
Sometimes we have alcohol.
Sometimes we have guests.
Since I've always been fascinated by true crime, I wanted to delve deeper into the criminal mind and discuss why these criminals commit these vile acts.
Was it nature? Was it nurture? Or was it just plain old narcissism?
Join us every week for a brand new episode.
You can find us on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, and Podbean.
Don't call the cops. Bye.